This is Court Butler of Butler Maps, and you're listening to Chasing the Horizon, a podcast by, for, and about motorcyclers.
Welcome to Chasing the Horizon, a podcast by, for, and about motorcyclists brought to you by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. Subscribe in iTunes, Google Play Music, or stream from their website at horizon.bmwmoa.org. My name is Wes Fleming. Thanks for joining us. Jumping right into the news, I'm going to kick things off with Royal Enfield. I know, that's a huge surprise, but this is legit news. Royal Enfield is taking another big step into the 21st century by putting ABS on its motorcycles. They'll start with single-channel ABS on the 350 and 500cc bullets and eventually outfit the entire line with ABS. The reason for the change is a new regulation in India that requires all motorcycles above 150 cc's to have ABS. Single-channel means only one braking circuit on the motorcycle has ABS. In Royal Enfield's case, that will be, of course, the front brake. It doesn't make sense to do it the other way around. While this is obviously not going to be as effective as dual-channel ABS, it's better than nothing, and it meets India's legal requirements. I expect it won't be long before India's legislature closes the loophole and we see dual-channel ABS on bikes sold there. Royal Enfield is anticipating this possible move by equipping its 650cc twins with dual-channel ABS from the factory. Royal Enfield will be using ABS units made by Bosch, a German company that opened a manufacturing plant in India in 2017. Bosch appears to have tailored their motorcycle ABS base unit for the smaller bikes that are popular across India, Asia, and much of the rest of the world outside the United States. Over in the racing world, you may or may not know that the big guns in motorcycle racing have kicked off their 2018 seasons. MotoGP and World Superbike both debuted in the past few weeks, and last year's champions are off to strong starts. MotoGP champ Marc Marquez finished second behind Andrea Dovizioso at Losail in Qatar, and World Superbike champ Jonathan Rea won a race and finished fourth in the other at Buriram in Thailand. I'm more a World Superbike fan than a MotoGP fan for a few reasons. First and foremost is that we have Superbike races in the U.S. I don't mean that they hold the races here. Both circuits toss us one race apiece each season. I mean that American motorcycle riders race Superbikes all across the country in local, regional, and national circuits. Moto America is one example of a national circuit. I think it's awesome that I can go to the nearest track and see bikes race there that are similar to the bikes I see racing in World Superbike and that are on sale in my local dealers. Now, they're obviously race bikes. They're not exact, but they're similar. I don't get that with MotoGP. MotoGP is fun to watch, the riders are amazingly talented, and the races themselves are very exciting, but that circuit just doesn't resonate with me the way World Superbike does. Plus, World Superbike has BMWs in it, and MotoGP does not. All of you know I ride BMW motorcycles, and it's thrilling to see the Roundel cross the start-finish line. Everybody wants to see their bike in the race, so World Superbike is where it's at. Now, unfortunately, last year, BMW did not do great in World Superbike. For one, they don't have an official factory team. Team Althea out of Italy races in World Superbike, and they do it with a lot of BMW Motorrad support, but it's not a true official factory team. Last year, they lost their junior rider, Marcus Reiterberger, early in the season. He said it was because of a difficult recovery from a back injury that he suffered previously. I say it's because he wasn't performing well. He dropped down to what is the equivalent of a minor league circuit and did just fine there. Reiterberger's a nice guy and a good racer, but I think he just wasn't up to the challenge of World Superbike. That left Althea with a replacement rider in the junior position, a guy called Rafaela De Rosa, and their season-long premier rider, Jordi Torres. Torres had some fantastic races, but he never finished higher than fourth. He finished in the top 10 17 times in 2017, but he just couldn't get on the podium. His frustrations led him to leave Althea and take up with a team running MV Agusta motorcycles. De Rosa left the team as well and is racing this season on, guess what, MV Agusta, but he's dropped down a level to World Supersport. In the off-season, Althea brought in veteran racer Loris Baz to lead the charge on BMW's Superbike, the S1000RR. Boz has finished 9th, 11th, or 12th in the first 4 races of this season. As is typical of things at this level, Althea has made no mention of Torres or DeRosa leaving the team or why they're only fielding 1 racer this season. Torres, Reiterberger, and DeRosa all expressed frustration last season with their motorcycles, specifically the electronics that all of those bikes have. Boz has been out of World Superbike for a few years, but he seems to be back with a vengeance, and he's doing really well. Now, the real reason I wanted to bring up racing in this episode is because there's a brand new way for fans to experience motorcycle racing. Starting on June 7th, you can get the newest iteration of the MotoGP video game. That's right, for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Steam, which works on pretty much any personal computer from what I understand. Not long after that, you'll be able to get the game on Nintendo Switch. I haven't played a motorcycle video game since Road Rash, but maybe I'll have to check this one out. That's going to do it for the news this time around. Up next is my discussion with Court Butler, the founder of Butler Maps. This episode's discussion is with Court Butler. A lot of people may not know who Court is, but you probably have heard of Butler Maps if you ride motorcycles, and that's where Court comes from. Court Butler of Butler Maps. Welcome to Chasing the Horizon. How you doing today?
Great, Wes. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Well, yeah, and I don't even know where is Butler Maps located. Are you guys are in Colorado?
Right. Yeah, our headquarters is about 2 hours west of Denver, a small town called Eagle.
Gotcha. That's a pretty majestic name for a town, Eagle, Colorado. And
yes, it is.
What kind of now 2 hours west of Denver? So are you all the way on the other side of the Rocky Mountains from there?
No, we're smack dab in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, near Vail. We're about 20 miles west of Vail.
Okay.
And about 40 miles north of Aspen. So I think our town is a pretty good base camp for everything outdoors, from climbing to mountain biking, motorcycling, dirt bike riding, whatever you want to do. This is a pretty good base camp for that.
Yeah, and I've done a little bit of riding in Colorado before, specifically in the mountains, and it's amazing. The one of the things that struck me was how it could be, bright and shiny and warm on one side of the mountains and foggy and rainy on the other side, and then you go over another crest and you're back into the sunny and warm again. It was really crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do have quite a bit of different weather climates and patterns in the state throughout the year. In the mountains where we are, it's typically from early November through, I would say, mid-March, quite snowy. And so if you want to get your moto fix, you go either down to the Front Range, or even better, a lot of locals will go to the Western Slope, Grand Junction, Fruita, Rabbit Valley, stuff like that, and even over to Moab, Utah, because we're only 3 hours away from that as well.
Okay, so how think back a little bit, because I've never met you, but I've seen you in some videos, so I know that you're kind of an adult. I'm not going to ask you how old you are, but I want you to think back a little bit to when you first got into motorcycling. What attracted you to motorcycles?
Well, I had motorcycles in high school, a little bit before that. I didn't really get into off-highway motorcycling till a little bit later, but my uncle kind of was the impetus to me getting interested in motorcycle touring. I remember, like a lot of people, back in 2005, 2004, that Charlie Borman and Ewan McGregor did their first documentary, the Round the World.
Yeah, Long Way Round.
Yeah, Long Way Round. And so that was kind of, my wife and I saw that, and that kind of springboarded us into wanting to know more about dual sport riding. And then you had just been awarded or given the title of, dual sport motorcycle of the year, and it was a GS. It was the first year that they did the GS 1200.
Yeah.
And so Tammy and I went and bought that bike, and my uncle kind of got us into motorcycle touring. And so rode for a few years, and then kind of saw that there was this, endemic problem in the motorcycle industry that, people buy a motorcycle, you farkle it out, you get all your gear, but then you really don't know where to go ride the motorcycle. And it seemed like, from my experience, that it was taking as much time to plan a ride as actually the ride itself. And so I wanted to come up with a better way. And that's one of the reasons Butler Maps was created, was for that problem in the industry.
Yeah, well, and that actually gives me an opening to ask you a question that's been kind of bugging at me ever since we connected to get you on the show. We live in an age of electronics. For the past 6-8 years, maybe even 10 years, I've had GPS units of varying complexity. But now even my daughter, who doesn't drive yet, has turn-by-turn directions available to her on her smartphone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The maps are constantly updated and those kinds of things. What bug got into you to create paper maps in that world?
Well, we started Butler Maps, my business partner and I started Butler Maps in 2008. And so that whole technological, at least smartphone revolution, was just starting out. I think
right.
The first iPhone was 2007. So it really hadn't taken off yet, but there were signals that were showing this emerging trend. But back then, there was nobody else that was trying to raise the bar and apply some rigor to the map making experience that we were looking to do. And it was, like I've said to a lot of people in the past, nobody's been dumb enough to actually take the time or spend the money it takes to make one of our maps. To
right.
hire a bunch of guys, teach them how to rate the roads to our standards, and send them out and ride every single road in a state or a region. It's very expensive. It's time consuming. So most people are like, well, why would I want to do that? So it's been great because that's kind of our secret sauce, and that's how we have our patent, is the methodology in how we capture the information, the drama that we distill down onto the maps.
Right.
But over the years, we started a company that was originally called Riding Social, but we changed the name to Rever because we saw that there was a large emerging demand in the industry itself that motorcyclers wanted to be a lot more connected on the experience. They wanted to reflect on it. They wanted to share their experience more than just a paper map could provide.
Right.
And so that's where Rever was born. And, but looking back, we're starting to see another trend take place with the amount of noise that is in the industry, all the industries, as a matter of fact, that people are wanting to do things more for like the pure reasons of doing them now. A lot of people are getting tired of the amount of noise and connectedness on their motorcycle rides. They want to just get out there and ride a motorcycle for the love of riding a motorcycle. And that's where the Butler brand has always done well, because we're not trying to be anything that we're not. We're just good at making maps. And, we always like to say that a map is not a substitute for a GPS at the end of the day. There's values to both. But at least a map, no one really plans a trip with their buddies. If you just imagine, early spring and you're in the garage with your buddies wanting to plan a trip, you're not looking at a 5-inch GPS screen. Yeah, you're looking at your map, and you're trying to figure out where you want to go and the cool places. And then you may supplement, your computer to figure out distances and things like that. But for the most part, there's an intrinsic amount of value in just good old paper maps that I don't think there will be anything that absolutely substitutes it. There's companion technologies that actually, complement it. Yeah.
And I find in my own personal travels, I still travel with paper maps on my motorcycle and in my car as well. last summer, I think it's been a year, I finally got another tank bag. I had bad tank bag experiences and had kind of sworn off them. But I made sure when I got a new tank bag, it had a map pocket on top of it, because that's the thing that I missed, was having easy access to a map. Because I think one of the things that a map gives you that a GPS unit or your smartphone can't is that big picture experience where you can see, right. Okay, I live in Central Virginia and I can see the road from here to Nashville, in a southeastern, mid-Atlantic regional map. I can see the major roads, not just interstates, but state highways and things like that. And I can see kind of the direction I need to go. And I don't really need my GPS except for a few critical points along that way. And when I get to Nashville, how do I find my friend's house in Nashville without having to have him send me a list of turn-by-turn directions that I then tape to the top of my tank or my tank bag? Well, I can just punch up his address on my GPS and it takes me right there. But I've been able to use that map to do the hard work. The paper map does the hard work for me, and then we just have kind of the finishing off. And that's one of the things that I own, I think probably more than a half a dozen Butler maps, several BDR maps, but I also own a lot of the G1 maps that are just paved roads. And I use those all the time when I go to a place where I have a map. I don't live in Colorado, but I have the Colorado map for when I'm in Colorado. For most people, they look at BDR and they think off-road, they look at G1 and they think on-road, but the distinctions I don't think are that easy. So can you talk a little bit about the different kinds of maps that you guys make?
Right. Well, first of all, Wes, you nailed it when it comes to perspective. When you're planning a ride with your buddies or yourself, a map can give you a larger perspective that's valuable and beneficial, whereas a GPS or a smartphone app or even a computer screen, just you kind of lose that perspective. So, right there with you, you nailed it. As far as, with a GPS, there are crucial points. If you're in a really urban area, a city, a GPS is so valuable. A map is not really the optimal product to use. So we're right there with you. As far as our different titles, so the BDR line, Backcountry Discovery Route line, those maps highlight an entire dirt route across a state. Usually the route is north to south, and it's not just, we didn't just arbitrarily select dirt roads. There's actually a criteria there that we have reconnaissance teams that the BDR sends out that actually, they're not goat trails, they're not single tracks, but they are beautiful thoroughfares that kind of stitch together some of the coolest backcountry experiences around a state. And so that map, in conjunction with free tracks that you can download on the BDR website, kind of showcases the best of a single route across an entire state, trying to use at least 90%. The Mid-Atlantic States BDR was slightly more paved roads,
sure,
just because it is a logistical hurdle out there. There are so many paved roads. There's so much private property that you really do have to stitch together more paved stuff. But the paved stuff is awesome. But so you have the BDR series. Then you kind of have our legacy series called the G1 series. Early on, those maps only had street rides. Some of the later editions, we have 45 to 50 what we call recommended dual sport roads. And those are roads that, like I said, they're not goat trails, they're not single tracks, they're made for like fully loaded GS average rider. And those roads are perfect for people that want to like hopscotch from the best paved roads in the state to hop on some of the dirt stuff. So that like the true dual sport experience.
Right.
And the G1 series kind of, those have our secret sauce, what we like to call, is our patent. And what we were able to get a utility patent on in 2008 was, you can't patent a map, obviously it's prior art, but we were able to patent the actual way you indicate drama on a map through colors or shading. So basically the twisties, elevation change, scenery, peril, safety aspects, we're able to patent how you disseminate that information onto a map. And so we got that patented. We created a program called RDAP, Rider Data Acquisition Program, where early on it was just a few of us, owners and a few close friends. Rob Watt is one of the guys early on that was helping us. He's the director of route development for BDR. And he and all of us would take benchmark atlases and gazetteers and take page by page and highlight every single road and print the copies off on a copy machine and give them to all the riders. And then the riders would go out in groups of 4, and they would split up in the mornings. There'd be a ride leader, and each rider would ride their allotted roads that day, and then they'd meet back up if they can in the evenings to stay in a motel or camp or whatever. And then, so you say the average rider is getting 350 to 400 miles a day, and you multiply that by 8 riders. I mean, that's a lot of riding. You're getting 3,000 miles a day. And when we say that our average G1 Series map has about 50,000 miles of cumulative riding or collective riding on it, most people say, how do you do that? Well, it's because we have teams that actually really understand the rating system and go out and take big swaths of riding at one time. And so at the end of the day, these riders, early on it was Garmin 60 CSX devices, and so it was harrowing. It was downright scary, dangerous. If you can imagine riding some of the, there's that commensurate relationship with the best roads are also the ones that kind of have, they're the most technical. You got to be on it, at least on the street. The great twisties, lots of passes, peril, all that stuff. And so if you imagine you're just, riding down these roads that are awesome, and you're trying to capture the information with waypoints, dropping waypoints and saying, G1 ends, G2 begins, so on and so forth. Well, it got to be pretty dangerous. And so we ended up building an in-house app for our riders years later. But, the backstory with the rating system is that we ended up getting a patent. We created this rating system that tries to distill out the level of subjectivity in a ride. Like, your idea of a great ride might differ from mine a little bit. So we hired some statisticians early on to help us with a rating system that would hold up with, scalability and create a standardization of, roads in a state. Okay. So, and that rating system is pretty easy. It's G3, G2, G1. G1 is the best stuff. You can think of it like good, better, and best.
Gotcha.
And the reason we did that, all those ratings have a color, orange, red, and gold. Mm-hmm. And G1 is the gold rides. And that's kind of the focus or the feature of our G1 Series maps, are these G1 rides, and there's boxes all around them. And so essentially that map was born out of the, people, most Americans have 2 weeks of paid time off or 2 weeks of vacation a year. And when you're on a motorcycle and you want to, you're taking your wife and you guys are disappearing to Northern California, for example, for a week on a motorcycle trip, you never ask, hey, I just want to ride the mediocre roads. You want to ride the best stuff.
Right.
And that's the reason we came up with this rating system, is that most people automatically go for these gold routes first because they represent literally the best paved miles in each state. And so that's our second series, these G1 Series maps. Like I said, they also have dirt roads, really good dirt roads. Okay. So if your desire is to do, paved and then some dirt as well, the G1 Series, that is pretty much as spot on of a product as you're going to pretty much need. The third series of maps we have is called Adventure Series. That's a newer series of maps that it's kind of by any means. It's our most recent one is Historic Route 66. It's a 2-map set. But we also realized that over the years that more than just motorcyclers use our maps and benefit from our maps. Sports car enthusiasts, RVers, huge cyclists, And so this series is less motorcycle centric, I would say, and it's more along the lines of it doesn't really matter what you're riding or driving. These are great routes. But our bread and butter is still the G1 series maps.
Yeah, and that's the ones that I have the most numerous, because that's the one. I'm not much of an off-road rider. I'm trying to learn the techniques that are needed to be a good off-road rider, but I'm still primarily, 98% on the road, and the G1s have been the ones that I paid attention to, but I'm definitely going to pick up a couple of the adventure maps just to take a look at them. And that's, one of the things that I don't want to say I'm kind of a nerd, and that's not really a surprise to too many people, but I really love the way Butler maps look. They're just physically beautiful. The paper is thick, and it's, you're not going to just shred this thing if you fold it wrong and toss it in the back seat for 6 months, and they're just physically beautiful maps to look at. I'm interested to find out a little bit about your design process. How do you go from let's make a map of Utah and turn it into the G1 map of Utah? Right.
So thank you for that. First of all, our maps, we've tried to kind of instill this archival quality to our maps. First of all, they're made out of a tear-proof, waterproof product called Hopsin, and so they're pretty durable. We actually have customers that are still running around with our first edition Colorado map, awesome, which was our first map we printed in 2010. So they last for a long time. They're waterproof, they're tear-proof, so those are pretty valuable. But basically, the design process starts with our cartographical team. Once our riders finish riding in a region, a state, an area, they have all of their waypoints have been automatically uploaded to a remote server where our carto team actually pulls those waypoints. Say there's 1,000 waypoints that correlate to these ratings in, southern mid-Atlantic.
Okay.
And those cartographers drop the colors down on the map. And so they have, that's basically what you see when you see like this resplendent map. It's just, popping with colors and stuff. We have a proprietary color system that we created that makes our maps just really pop out and look really eye-catching from a distance. And then the carto team drops these colors and then additional motorcycle-specific info. And then the backside of the maps, basically the design and the beauty that you see is from our designer, Ellen Johnson. She has been with us from the beginning, and she is a fundamental part of the beauty and the amazing aspect of seeing our maps. She, she's designed everything from the beginning, and we have a lot of different aspects that pull off of the front map side to the back, like inset boxes. Mm-hmm. We have elevation profiles of all of these rides. We have distances between towns, ride symbols, ride descriptions, dirt road quick guides. I mean, just a ton of motorcycle-specific information for somebody that wanted to take off on a trip to California, for example, and wanted to be confident about everything that they needed to do. It's right there on that one map.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about your maps is that that variety of information and how much there is on it. And it's one of those things that you can just sit and look at for hours and dream and plan, and that's one of the great things about them.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, and tell Ellen I think she's doing a fantastic job.
I will, for sure.
How long do you think it takes from hey, we should make a map of Kentucky to, hey, we just sold our first map of Kentucky? What do you think the number of man hours involved in that is, and woman hours?
Right. Well, the Appalachian series or the Appalachian range has been a gigantic undertaking, just namely because of the high concentration of roads out there. It surpassed anything that we would have thought originally. And so the average map out there, that's a 5-map series. By the time we're completely done, there'll be the Southern Appalachian map, which we already have out. We printed that a few years ago. There's the Southern Mid-Atlantic map, which we just printed like a month ago.
Okay.
Then there's the Northern Mid-Atlantic map, which is coming out this summer. Then there's the Northern New England map, which is out. That came out last year. And then finally, something that's coming out in about a month and a half is our Northeastern Maine Maritimes map that we spent last summer doing. But to answer your question, for like an average state, let's say, I don't know, Arizona, for example, that would be from conception to actual, having a viable product on the market is probably about 3 to 4 months, depending on how much effort and money we put at our R&D team, because that's what takes the most amount of time, is actually mobilizing the bikes to the area, getting the riders out there to ride the roads. Once the roads have been ridden and the data has been captured, then it's a pretty straightforward process of probably about a month for the cartographers to drop the information and Ellen to do, her magic to us, going to press and having those maps in hand. So it can be anything as soon as, 3 months to, 6 months, depending on how big the scope of the project is.
Right. So everyone is an undertaking in that respect, but it's kind of varied on how long it'll take. What
exactly?
Do you know off the top of your head, how many different maps you guys make right now?
I think we have about 32 titles now, all said and done, and those are split. We have 8 BDR maps now. Right. With the Mid-Atlantic BDR, and we have 22. I think we have 34, and we have 26 G1 Adventure and Adventure Series maps. And some of our G1 Series maps are regional, so they include numerous states, like all of our Appalachian maps. They're not just one state; they include 3 or 4 states. So we do have a big chunk of the United States mapped, and coming down the pipeline, like I said, we have a Northeastern Maine Maritimes map here in about a month and a half. We're working on the Great Lakes Upper Peninsula area. We're working on wrapping up the Northern Mid-Atlantic, which is like Connecticut, Pennsylvania areas.
Sure.
And then after that, there's a few other smaller states. We're also working with BMW to start doing some stuff over in Europe. We actually mapped. Exciting. Yeah, we mapped the German Alps about a year and a half ago with BMW over there. They actually helped out line up the riders, and we sent a couple of our guys over there to actually train some of the BMW corporate guys to ride the roads. And so we have, about 50,000 miles of riding done over there. And then, as time permits, there's a lot more logistical hurdles of mapping international than here domestic. So those are things coming down the pipeline, and we'll just see how it goes over there. If it has as much stickiness as our maps do over here, if they're as popular.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Maine and Maritimes map coming out in about a month and a half. So you and I are talking here right at the end of February, which the episode may not come out until March or April. But so a month and a half from now would be kind of mid to late April that people can expect to see that Maine and Maritimes map. So just to kind of pump the timeline there.
Yep.
So you mentioned BDR several times. You've mentioned Reaver a couple of times. How do those entities fit into the kind of the overall Butler concept? You start with Butler and then you add on BDR, you add on Reaver. How do those things tie in? Kind of without wanting to say how do they tie in at the corporate level? How do they tie in at the corporate level?
Right. So the BDR, like I said earlier, is an organization. There's a board of directors that my business partner, Justin Bradshaw with Rever, he and Paul, and indirectly me, and like 4 or 5 other guys helped collectively create the BDR. The first route was the Washington Backcountry Discovery Route, which, we did the map for. There's the documentary that actually accompanies every single route, which is nice as well, because it's a full feature-length documentary that kind of gets people pumped, kind of shows them what the route looks like, and then they can actually fill in the blanks with the map and the tracks when the time comes if they decided that they want to ride that route. So the BDR basically, I think it answers the big trend and the big question of riders really wanting to get a motorcycle that goes off-road. They want to throw their camping gear on it, and they want to disappear with their buddies for 5 to 10 days. Well, these maps are specifically for that. So I think that helps Butler be a little bit more balanced from being a street map company to a dirt and a street map company. And then Rever was, like I said, way back in the day, that started as Riding Social. And it was because, we saw that there was this emerging trend of people that didn't just want the paper map experience. They wanted to take that with them on their phone. They wanted to capture the essence of their ride with, the track. They wanted to share it with their friends. So early on, the features were quite a bit more rudimentary, but recently there's quite a bit more robust features with Rever, with turn-by-turn and buddy tracking and a lot of other cool things that help us take us from kind of an antiquated map company to something that, we're tied in with, an innovative tech company that, a lot of people in the industry love the app because it does a lot of things, especially the desktop version, that Google Maps doesn't do, that Basecamp doesn't do. So it does help riders, try to plan a ride one step further than the actual paper maps as well.
Yeah. Well, to be perfectly honest, it's not difficult to do things that Basecamp doesn't do. And that is so true. That's no slam on Garmin. I use Basecamp all the time, but it is not the most robust mapping program. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So did you, in developing Rever, in developing the maps, did you ever kind of come at it from the position of this is what I'd like to see and this is missing from other things, and how can I do that in a way that's efficient, effective, cost effective, and still gives motorcycle riders the information they need? Or did you just kind of hit it that this is what I want to see and I'm not going to worry about anybody else?
No, it was definitely the further, not the latter. We early on, like I said, we saw that the hurdles in the industry were, the only motorcycle map companies that were around. There was Mad Maps, and then there was a small brand out east that really what they did was, it's valuable in the aspect of riders. They also want, the custom curated loop that a map will give. But what we found was where we wanted to focus on was let people have their own creativity of where they want to go. We just show them the best roads, the difference between the mediocre roads and the best roads. Yeah. So like a typical road map shows you the fastest way from point A to point B. A Butler map shows you the best way. And so it was born out of seeing riders and just the frustration and, where should we go, guys? Well, I don't know. We got, Jim's looking at roads on the internet, and the only thing that there was out, back in, 2010, 2012 was these websites that were kind of crowdsourced that had, 2,000 people saying that, this road outside of Adair, Iowa was good. But the problem is that, I don't share the same similarities with, 2,000 riders,
right.
Everybody from Harley riders to, crotch rocket guys. So we figured that we would try to raise the bar a little bit. And then with Rever, there were a lot of apps out there, not motorcycle-specific apps, but there were a lot of apps out there that actually tried to capture some sort of mapping experience, but there was nothing that was motorcycle-specific. And we found that, like with Google Maps, for example, if you were trying to build your own route and you weren't staying in a town that had a name, you're staying in the forest, in a campground, how do you type in, where you are in the morning so you can actually navigate from there?
Yeah.
And so we figured out how to, point and click. So you literally can touch the map screen anywhere, innumerable amount of times on your device, on the computer, and you can start or stop your trip anywhere on the screen. And that is one of the motorcycle-specific features that has been really popular in the industry because, that's what guys want. And so here's the first app that came out in the industry that really was tailored towards what a lot of riders want and what they don't really need. And so that's where we feel like we tried to do our due diligence to see what was a problem in the industry early on and try to figure it out and solve that.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned that you had gotten infatuated with an R1200 GS due to a long way round, ended up riding one of those. What are you riding now? Are you still on the same bike?
No, the company fleet, we have GSs, GSAs for mapping, for our street mapping, for our G1 series maps. The bikes that we found are the most dependable, most comfortable, are the GSs and GSAs. They're not quite as good off-road, but with our G1 series maps, 99% of the mapping anyway is on the street.
Right.
And so what you really need is a bike that can carry a lot of gear, that can carry some camping gear, that can carry your mapping gear, that has a big alternator, because a lot of our riders, have heated gear because we map most of the year around. So even if you're, you can ride in 10, 15, 20, 30 degree weather, as long as the roads aren't icy.
Yeah.
You just have to have the right gear. And unless you have heated gear, you're on bide time. I don't care how many layers you have. If you're riding in 25 degree weather all day long, it's only a matter of time you're going to get cold.
Absolutely.
And so a big alternator is important. GSs, GSAs have a big alternator that you can power
a small
heated
town.
jacket, heated pants. Yeah, exactly. Wind protection is important because at the end of the day, we all know that wind is basically what tires you out. The difference between 400 and 500 miles really boils down to how comfortable you are on that bike. And those GSs are just super comfortable. And it's turned out to be like the optimal mapping bike. But we also, we're also doing stuff with KTM. So we have some 1090s, we have a 1290, and those bikes are fantastic for, more off-road BDR style stuff. They're not perfectly matched for multiple days, 400 or 500 miles on the street. They're not quite as comfortable. They don't have quite the same wind protection. But for off-highway stuff, they're spot on.
Yeah, well,
so I shoot back and forth from KTM to BMWs depending on what we're doing.
Gotcha. And just to kind of dip back to the Mid-Atlantic BDR, I've got several of the BDR maps. I'm thinking Idaho, Nevada, and Arizona specifically that I've looked at. I think the Arizona map came to me as part of a review package with the DVD and whatnot. And by the way, the documentaries that you guys put out with each new series are getting better and better as you go along. So kudos to that. Right. You guys are learning as you go, and it's really great to see the not that any of them were bad, but it's great to see the quality of the documentaries improving. But to me, riding north to south in Idaho off-road 100% of the way is kind of a pipe dream. It's not really something that I'm gonna do necessarily. So I was really excited when Paul from TourTech told me you guys were doing the Mid-Atlantic route. And sure enough, you guys started in Southern Virginia, and the first 20, 25 minutes of the documentary was all places that I've ridden and places that I've been with my friends. So it was really fantastic to see that. And I'm really excited to at the possibility of you guys extending the northern and southern reaches of those of that Mid-Atlantic series.
Right. Well, the BDR is a remarkable organization. Those guys are doing a tremendous amount. Paul and Ina and Rob, those guys, Paul's the CEO of TourTech USA, and pretty much half of his time every week is going towards helping out the BDR. There's only one person that's actually paid through the BDR, and it's Ina. Everybody else, it's just a donated effort of, people's time and their resources. And so it's a beautiful thing that it's had so much positive spin. I was in Asheville a couple weeks ago at one of the premieres. The BDR has between 20 and 30 premieres around the country every year after we put out a new title.
Yeah.
And these premieres are either at dealerships or movie theaters. And this premiere was in Asheville, and it was amazing. There was almost 300 people there, and a lot of people out east have been waiting for the BDR to do an East Coast dirt route, because there's a scarcity of that stuff out there.
It's tough to find.
Exactly. And so it was overwhelming, the positive response from people out there. And so it is really cool to see how much free effort and donations come to help the BDR grow. And I know the next map that we're doing is the California BDR. It's a Southern California winter route.
Wow.
So that's going to be a fantastic route. It's going to start right on the border there of Southern California, Mexico, and Arizona in Yuma, and it's going to go all the way up to the Mojave and end about midway like Bishop. And so building that thing has been a logistical challenge for Rob, because a winter route, realistically, there's not very many places in this country where you can ride motorcycles for a long interrupted distance in January and February without hitting snow.
Yeah.
And so there was a hurdle there, but the route is amazing, and that should have a huge positive response too, because a lot of people, when it's freezing up in Idaho and there's 3 feet of snow, the prospects of them actually trailering their bike down to Southern California with their buddies and riding in the wintertime is probably going to be, really, really,
slim.
People are going to love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that gives them an opportunity to get out in the wintertime and do some riding, even if they have to go somewhere and rent or borrow a bike.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So do you have without putting you on the spot too much, do you have a timeline on that map?
The documentary is, the actual documentary ride is going to be mid-April. And then that map, that's still up in the air as far as when that map will be released. I would say fall, which is a perfect time because
before winter.
You're not going to be able to. Yeah, you're not going to be able to ride that ride, or you're not going to want to ride that ride in the summertime. The Mojave is 110 degrees, and so that'll be legitimately a perfect time of the year. If that thing comes out in like September, everybody is going to jump on board with riding that route.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to keep an eye out for it when in the fall, and hopefully we'll see that then.
Right.
Before we go, I want to give you a chance to tell everybody your website, your URL for your websites. Give us the Butler and the BDR both, if you don't mind.
So the Butler Maps website is Butler Maps, BUTLERMAPS.com. Rever's site is rever.co, and the BDR website is ridebdr.com.
Cool, and I'll make sure that I get all those on our website and in our newsletters as well, so that awesome. People can get to them.
Great.
Court, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk to us. I know you're a busy guy, and I really appreciate you taking time to sit down and talk maps with us.
Absolutely, Wes. Thank you so much. You as well. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Thanks for the interest in hearing a little bit about our story. And I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely no problem.
All right. Have a great one.
You too.
Okay. Bye.
Because this podcast is produced by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America, in every episode I highlight one benefit of being a member. I admit it's an enticement to get you over to our website and get you to join for at least 1 year. I've been a member since 1999 and have used the member benefits to my advantage countless times since then, especially the Roadside Assistance Program. But that's not what I'm going to tell you about today. Today, it's short and sweet, and it's all about the discount you can get on ads in CycleTrader by being an MOA member. CycleTrader is the leading online marketplace for power sports vehicles of all kinds. As a member of the MOA, you can sell your motorcycle on CycleTrader.com and save $10 on enhanced listings, which usually cost $29.95. Visit bmwmoa.org, click on membership, and then membership discounts. Log in with your member information, and you can get the discount code and use it to your heart's content. Before I sign off for this episode, I want to remind you to check out our website at horizon.bmwmoa.org. You can get all the links for this and other episodes going back almost to the first one. You can also sign up for the email newsletter at tinyletter.com/chasingthehorizon. The podcast is on Facebook and Twitter as well, and my kid tells me I should be on Instagram, but I don't know if I have the mental bandwidth to take on another social media platform. Drop me an email at podcast@bmwmoa.org and tell me if the teenager in my life is right about something. Thank you for coming back for the 18th episode of Chasing the Horizon, which featured a discussion with Court Butler, the founder of Butler Maps. Our next episode will feature a discussion with Andrew Payne, a photographer with a penchant for small displacement motorcycles. That episode will be out on April 16th. Andrew Finberg composed and recorded our theme music. Karen Halker designed our logo. Thanks again to all our guests and listeners for giving us their time. We'll see you out there somewhere on the road, or off it. Ride safe.